ADHD Babes, the podcast. A podcast hosted by the ADHD Babes community for the community. Please note, nothing mentioned during the podcast is meant as a diagnosis. If you believe you have ADHD, please seek professional advice and visit or join ADHDbabes.com for help with diagnosis. No clinical diagnosis is required to join. And now, you're listening to the next episode of ADHD Babes, the podcast.
Welcome back to another episode with us at ADHD Babes, the podcast. Thank you to everyone who's joined us so far. And don't forget to follow us so you never miss an episode. Give us a rating, preferably 5 stars, but whatever feels right to you. Review and share so that others can find us too. Today's episode is hosted by me, Emma G, and I'm delighted to be joined for my first time hosting by Kyrus, Keenan Westcott. Hi. If you've been living under a... Sorry?
I'm your first?
You are indeed.
Oh, I feel so special.
Now, listeners, if you've been living under a rock or, you just don't use social media, Kai is best known for his high vibes mental health content on social media, but his real job is in marketing. You can check out Kai's podcast, The Vibe with Kai, on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're listening to this, to join him on the journey towards mental health wellness, one laugh at a time. If you're not already, you should definitely hit the show notes when you finish listening to follow him on Instagram and TikTok, where he shares actionable mental health support tips with his signature humor and positivity. Welcome, Kai.
Oh my God, that was quite the introduction. I feel like I have so much to live up to now. Oh my goodness.
You're very welcome. So, I was very surprised to find out during the course of my research/stalking for this interview that not only is mental health not your profession, but that you only received your own ADHD diagnosis fairly recently in 2021. Can you tell us all a bit about yourself, how you got formally diagnosed, sort of what were the signs and symptoms or factors that led you to seeking a diagnosis?
Yeah, so admittedly, I had no idea what ADHD really was when I was first going through like the beginning part of my mental health journey. I had no idea. I was first diagnosed with depression, severe depression and high functioning anxiety and generalized anxiety. I had no idea that there was more to it. After my initial anxiety and depression diagnosis, I still felt something was off. Something still didn't feel right. And as I was talking with my doctor about it, I was describing some of the things that I was experiencing. They said, okay, well, how about you get diagnosed? How about you get tested for ADHD? And I was like, okay. And the first thought that I had with ADHD, it's like, okay, this is a bunch of little boys that can't sit still, right? Like that's the idea, that's the ideology that I had. And I'm like, that's not me. I don't know what, okay, I'll get tested, but whatever. And so I ended up getting tested. It went through this whole line of questioning with a psychiatrist. And I was diagnosed with it. And the more that I started to realize what it actually was, the more I realized that I've had this my entire life. The symptoms were there my entire life. And I was able to explain so much that I wasn't able to explain when I was younger or even as an adult. And so ever since then, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do as much research as I can to understand this, to help myself and to hopefully help other adults as well that are going through this.
Wow. Yeah. A lot of that is resonating hard. And I think with a lot of our listeners, as I said, I haven't said that yet actually, but a lot of people who have got a late diagnosis have said that whole same thing about their entire life. They felt that something was different, but they couldn't quite put their finger on what. And then they got the diagnosis and all of a sudden everything makes sense. It's quite the wild ride.
Yeah, I thought it was weird. I honestly thought that I was like not normal and that's something that I was just going about life the wrong way. And come to find out, there were literal chemical deficiencies happening inside of my brain that could explain it all. And so it feels good to be able to actually manage all of this on a daily basis and it feels good to put a name to it so I can manage it correctly.
Yeah. And like you talk a lot about the finding community with that diagnosis as well, which is something that we're very big on here at ADHD Babes. Community is the biggest thing about us. Have you found that that's been something that's really helped as well?
Oh yeah, it feels good to know that I'm not the only adult out there that's on the struggle bus.
Yeah.
It's very validating. It's very reassuring because there's so many adults out there that are going through the same things that we're going through. And even though so many people have to deal with ADHD on a daily basis, even though everybody's dealing with it, we still feel alone. We feel like we're alone on this journey. And it feels good to have a community of people that are able to be like, hey, Kai, you're not alone. Or, hey, Kai, watching your videos helped, me go talk to my doctor, or whatever it may be. And so you end up finding this really cool, supportive, validating community that makes you feel better every day when you're feeling down, about the difficulties that surround ADHD. And to know that you're not alone, or you can ask somebody that's in a similar situation as you for advice or for tips or insight, that feels pretty dang good. So it's nice to have that little community there.
Yeah, that's great. And it's great that you've been able to find that in your way online. It's great that we have that in our ADHD Babes. Like you say, it's just good to have people to turn to, and sometimes just to have someone who gets it and understands it, because as much as we try and educate people about our ADHD and how it impacts us, if you're not living it, a lot of people just don't seem to get it, do they? And I think what's really great about your content is that it's out there, it's shareable, and people see that, oh, okay, so it's not just Emma, or it's not just Shauna who's saying, oh, well, I forgot to do this because of my ADHD, or I didn't clean my room for 6 months because of my ADHD. Like, you can share these clips and say,
how did you know?
other people...
How did you know my life? Wait, hold on a second. What is this? How did you know?
Because my background is blurred for the same reason yours is.
In my defense, I'm in a hotel room, so I don't have to clean it at all.
Yeah. So yeah, it's great to be able to share content like yours and show people, look, it's not just me. There's these people too, and there's lots of other people out there. So that is fantastic. So my next question, we've kind of touched on it a little bit in there, that I had assumed that you were a mental health professional who just happened to have ADHD or be ADHD. More on that later. And I was going to say, is it because of the work that you've done on understanding and developing your own self-compassion before you got your diagnosis, or did you fall into that common diagnosis to expert pipeline hyperfocus that hits so many of us when we finally find out why we felt so out of place for so long?
Yeah, that's a great question. I always preface, whenever I'm talking about ADHD or depression, anxiety, anything mental health related, I always tell people that, like, I am not a mental health professional, nor do I play one on TV. So I always want to preface that. My main goal is to find, I guess, the humanity in it. To ground it a little bit, so it's a little bit more approachable and it's easier to talk about. And on top of that, because of my platform and the way it's grown, I'm very fortunate enough to have connected with a lot of different therapists and coaches, doctors that I've been able to have conversations with and connect other people with. So I feel like I'm more of like a traffic signal, like just telling people where they can, possibly go. Like, you can make a right turn, you can make a left turn, you can go straight, you can turn around, whatever you want. Like, here are your options, because there's a lot of people that just don't know where to begin. I certainly didn't know where to begin. And so if I can point people in the right direction towards the people that actually know what they're talking about, then hopefully people can get help. And from my angle, I always tell people, I'm not a professional. I'm just telling my story. I'm telling my journey. And hopefully there's something in my words that you hear that you're like, oh yeah, I've been through that before. And that kind of inspires you to go get help or go talk to somebody or whatever it may be. That's my main goal. But I'm definitely not a professional. I have enough student loans. I don't need to go to school for more. I don't want more schooling. I'm done.
Well, I think if that's your goal, you're definitely hitting it. And yeah, I don't think that everybody who is helping the ADHD community has to be doing so in a professional context. Like, we can be lived experience experts as well as people can be mental health experts from the educational side of things. And I think what a lot of people that I talk to find is that actually, and I don't know what that's like in the States, but in the UK, you can encounter mental health professionals who actually don't know that much about ADHD. And they will assess people based on outdated stereotypes. Like, we had a member who was told she couldn't have ADHD because she was too well dressed. You can't have ADHD because you've got a degree, you've got you've got a successful career. And like, I'm not going to turn this interview around and make it all about me, but I
Good, I'm
was
down.
I was like 41 when I got my diagnosis, and the only reason I suspected it, like you, I was like being told, oh, you've got anxiety, you've got generalized depression, you've got this, you've got that, for years and years and years, and I never would have thought any different. And I actually knew some things about ADHD because previous when I switched careers multiple times, I did do some learning about neurodiversity. I worked with autistic children. I worked as a special needs TA in school. Hate that name, but that's what it was called then. So I worked with autistic and ADHD children. I have a kickboxing coach who is ADHD and does a lot of outreach work talking about it. It never, ever landed that it could be me until a friend who I met shortly before my diagnosis literally said to me, I think you might want to get tested for ADHD. And I literally went, oh my God, my entire life makes sense in that instance, because I had seen it manifest in them. But a lot of people will go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist and say, I've got, and they'll list the ADHD symptoms, and they'll be told, no, you're holding down a full-time job, you can't have ADHD. And all these different things. So I think it is important that there are people like you out there talking about what it is like to actually live with ADHD. And that's what I try to do myself on, obviously, a much, much smaller platform. And it is nice when people say, oh, I read your post and I recognize that in my partner, myself, and they've gone away and got tested and they've got a diagnosis, and they're able to follow someone like you and get tips on how to manage their ADHD. So I don't think you need to go back to school. You are helping people.
It's funny because I say to people, because there's other ADHD content creators that I've heard say the same thing about, like, oh, I don't have as large of a platform as you. And I always say, for me, as long as I help one person, like, I don't care if I have one person watching or a million people watching. I don't care if one person can get something out of my stuff, all of it is worth it. You know what I'm saying? And it's not much different here in the United States, unfortunately, where there's, even in the mental health medical community, there is a lot of just ignorance and stereotype there, where people should get second opinions sometimes, because you're right. People will just be like, no, you don't have it because this, and this. Well, it's like, but I feel like I do, and so it's okay to get a second opinion. It's okay to go talk to somebody else that specializes in mental health, or in ADHD specifically, because not all mental health professionals, not all therapists, not all psychiatrists specialize in ADHD. Not all specialize in trauma. Not all specialize in depression. Not all specialize in prenatal mother therapy. Like, there's so many different things that somebody can specialize in. So, like, it's okay to go talk with a coach or a therapist that specializes in ADHD, that will just be like, oh yeah, let's have a conversation about this. People will sometimes go to their primary care doctor, like, for their physical checkup. And, at least when I was growing up, mental health was never a conversation that came up. Like, my doctor would ask how I'm feeling, but it was always from a physical perspective. It was never from, like, a mental health perspective. And luckily that's starting to change a little bit, but sometimes even your primary care doctor is not going to be well-versed in ADHD. So they might give their opinion, but that doesn't mean that it's the answer. It's okay to go get a second opinion with somebody that, like, really studies this and can understand what you're going through.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think the difficulty we have here is that you've very often, unless you've got the means to go outside and pay privately, if you're going through our NHS, you've got to get past that primary care doctor to get a referral into the system. And it is very flawed because, as you say, a lot of them haven't got a clue what they're talking about. But like things are starting to change slightly, and there are other ways and about. We're very lucky at ADHD Babes. We have psychiatrists working with us to provide assessments, one per month, which is brilliant of her. I don't want to go down too much of a rabbit hole with that, but it was great to hear your thoughts about that.
But if we did go down that rabbit hole, that'd be the most ADHD podcast in the history.
I'm sure we will go down plenty of rabbit holes.
And then an hour later, we'd be like, wait, what were we originally talking about?
I literally was just about to be like, I'm putting the timer on for the rabbit hole, but it didn't happen. So go.
So I sort of mentioned earlier about if you happen to be or have ADHD, where do you stand on the whole, on which side do you stand on the whole, this person has ADHD, this person is ADHD debate? Do you have any strong feelings about that?
Wow. I never thought of that. That's interesting.
Oh.
Wow. Well, I feel like it's ingrained in our bodies, right? So like, it's not something that you can cure, but it is something that you can manage, right? So I feel like it is part of who we are. And when we say somebody has ADHD, it has like a connotation of it can be cured in a way, in a little
bit. They could choose to have it or not have it.
It's like, I'm not, like, you can choose, like, I'm not going to have ADHD today, maybe tomorrow, or there's like a medicine that you can take that'll just make it go away. But like, that's not how medicine for ADHD works. It'll help you manage it. It'll help with, some of the triggers that you need, but like, it's still there and it's always going to be there. So whether somebody has ADHD or is ADHD, oh man, I never thought of that. I might have to get back to you on that one. I don't know.
Oh, that's interesting because I see quite a lot of debates about it online, which is why I thought I'd ask.
I've never seen. I'm gonna have to look that up. I never seen that before. That's fascinating.
To be fair, that's an interesting take though, because in all the arguments, I don't think I've heard anyone mention that the having it makes it sound like you could choose to not have it. It kind of gets lined up with the whole is autistic or has autism debate, in which case most people would choose to say, I am autistic. And it kind of works better with autistic because there's a word for it, where you can't say I'm ADHD. Well, you can, but it sounds weird. But I think most of us are agreed we need a new name for it. And if we could have a name that we could say I am, then that would be great. But yeah, it's interesting to hear.
I'm gonna have to look that one up and do some research on it. I've never heard that before. That's fascinating.
I will make a little note to see if I can find any of the posts with the arguments and send them over to you.
I'm gonna forget. So like, please do. Send me an email afterwards. Be like, hi, you said that you were gonna do this. I'll be like, okay, bet I'll do that.
Homework. You didn't expect that, did you?
You know what? It's okay. I'm down.
Right. Okay. So you might, I don't know, it might make you blush with this next bit because I'm going to confess, I'm fangirling real hard over the fact that I got to do this interview. I was so surprised that somebody else hadn't snagged it. And with it being my first one, I was like, they're going to say, no, we need someone better. We need someone who's established to do this interview with this big name person. So yeah, I was super chuffed, and I can only assume that so I could only assume that everybody else was too intimidated by how awesome you are. So I was just super chuffed. I was obviously late submitting my script because there were so many things that I found out about you when I went into the research. I've been following you anyway, but then I went to research. I was like, oh, but I want to ask about this. Oh, but I can ask about this. Oh, but what about this? And I literally spent about 5 hours of car journeys going back through the podcast. So yeah, it was tricky to narrow down what I thought would be of the most benefit to our listeners, rather than just me going, these are all the things I want to know about Kai. So, for example, you did a post about the food touching on Thanksgiving plates, and I was just like, oh my God, so many stories. Because you had a big rant that you were, what is this with people not wanting their food touching?
I don't get it. It makes it taste better. Like, it's just like, let your food touch. It's okay. It's not contaminated. It's all going to the same place. Just like enjoy the flavors all at once. It's amazing. You should try it.
I need to actually play that video to my kids who, if I put their food on their plate and it's touching, will literally freak out, to the point where I've told them they've got to put their own food out then. And my sister also, we talked about getting her like one of those school meal trays with the sections on it because she hates her food touching.
Wow.
So I have to play that one to them. But I didn't think that would be of the best benefit for the listeners. So I'm going to go with this one, which is in one of your more recent videos, which was actually the day that I finally submitted my scripts. You talked about not liking what you see when you look in the mirror. It was a beautifully honest and vulnerable post, and people probably who follow you expect that from you now, but by now, because that's what you do. But it's not something that we often see from men, especially from Black men, especially on this topic.
Yeah.
How hard was it for you to open up this dialogue?
Very, very. And there's multiple reasons for that. Number one, I had just come off a project in which I had to get in the best shape of my life, right? And I did. I got in the best shape of my life. Like, I looked good. Like, I won't lie, I looked great, right? But that was really hard to accomplish. It was a pain in the butt. And so after the project was done, I didn't need to do that anymore. So I was like, okay, bet. I'm just gonna, ease back to where I was before, right? And so because of the way that I was working out, and because of all of the imagery that I would use for inspiration, because of the types of people that I would train with and stuff like that, this toxicity got into my brain of what my body should look like as a Black male content creator. And I would look in the mirror and I didn't like what I saw. And then from there, it kind of snowballed from just not just like the physical stuff, but just the way I looked in general when I wake up in the morning, or the way that I dressed, and so on and so forth. It kind of just started to snowball to the point that I'm like, I don't like the way that I look, and I don't know what to do about it. And I wanted to make a post about that because it's not often that like you mentioned before, there's not many people that talk, like men, that talk about that kind of thing. I looked, to find any kind of Black man that like would open up about how they looked physically and the struggles that they had with that. I didn't find much, and if much at all. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to make a post about this because it could help somebody. There might be another like Black man out there, or man in general, that could get something out of this, because it's just not something that's talked about amongst men. Like, I'm not going to go to my bro and be like, hey bro, guess what? I don't feel good today. Like, it's not, This is not a thing, like, how's this shirt make me look, bro? Like, it's not like a thing that, that I will have a conversation with my friends about. So, and I'm like, but why not? What is it about the way that I was raised, or the way that Black men are personified in media and social media and entertainment? Why is it that we can't just be open and vulnerable about our struggles? And that's when I'm like, this is exactly why I'm in the position that I'm in now in life, because I suppressed everything when I was younger. I'm playing sports, everything was, brush it off, or be a man about it. And there was no vulnerability in football. There's no vulnerability in basketball. You had to toughen up. There was no crying. You weren't allowed to do that. And I would suppress everything. And because of that, I would struggle with the way I look and the way I felt. And I knew I needed to change that. So yeah, so that's why I made the post. I'm like, hopefully there's a Black guy out there that's like, hey, Black guy, I'm with you, fellow Black man. I'm like, hopefully somebody can get something out of that.
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because there was a conversation that happened in the office the other day with one of my colleagues. He was like, "What was it? Someone had bought a cake in," and he was like, "Oh no, I'm being good," and we were like, there's nothing of you. And so we had a whole little conversation in the office about like the whole dad bod phenomenon, and why is it that, we've now stopped telling women what they've got to look like, but it seems to have shifted more. And well, we haven't stopped. We're still telling women what they need to look like, but it's also now filtering into men. And I'm going to be careful not to go off down an anti-capitalist rant here, but it's like the more people we can get to hate their bodies, and the more they can pay us to look different.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Yeah, I'm going to leave it at that, though. I won't go any further down that one. So when I wrote this script and wrote the questions out, all the replies that you'd had on that post had been from women. Did you get much of a response from men? Did you hear anything from the guys?
No, that's wow, you're really good.
Thank you.
That's a great question, because the publicly, the responses were all women, and they were all very supportive. Privately was all the guys.
Wow, that is interesting.
Got a lot of DMs from men.
And saying, were they supportive? Receptive?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, and like very like, I feel the same way. Everything was, and I did find it. Wow, that's a great question. I found it really interesting that all of the comments, like I got tons of comments on that, were all 98% women. And
telling you how hot you are.
Most of the DMs were from men, and like I kind of attributed that to like my audience on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. Like, no lie, it's like it fluctuates between 89 and 92% of people that identify as female, right? Like that's just I don't know how it got there, but like that's just my audience, and like it's okay. But yeah, I was like, okay, well maybe it's because most of my audience is female. But I found it really interesting that like the men that did comment did so privately.
Yeah,
not publicly.
I guess that's kind of like what you were saying about you wouldn't go chat with your bros about it when you're out playing sport. I guess it's kind of the same as that. It would be doing it out in public, like as if you'd gone up to someone on the basketball court. Whereas this, I suppose, is a bit more like if you were, I don't know, watching a DVD or something with a mate. I don't know. That is really interesting.
Married men. A lot of them were married men. Like it's not like it was just like, like I'm a single black dude with 2 cats. Like that's me, right? but like a lot of them were married men or men with children. Like these like men in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s messaging me about this, and I just found that fascinating. And I never talked about that with anybody until right now. That's a great question. That was on point. I like that.
And I'm glad I asked it, because that is really, really interesting, actually. It's given me a lot to think about. I do a lot of work around, so I picked on questions about things that are of interest to me because I've been on my own journey with my own body and self-acceptance for the past maybe, I've said 5 years when I wrote this, but actually it's probably longer than that since I had my kids, who are now 15 and 13. They've just had birthdays. I do know how old my children are. It's just changed. And that was largely about the not wanting them to grow their boys. So I suppose that the vibe would have been the same if they were girls, but it would have been angled slightly differently, but very much sort of, you are allowed to cry. You are allowed to show your emotions. We talk about how we're feeling. And I don't know if it's my doing. They're not particularly sporty. They're not into football at all. I haven't stopped them from doing it. They do kickbox as well. But they are they don't cry a lot now, but they're very open about how they're feeling. And I think that's good, but one of them does have issues with the way he looks, and I don't know why. And it's interesting that, like you say, it's not something that boys talk about or guys talk about with each other, but it is obviously something that's there on their minds. But I think that's the same with lots of things, isn't it? I think there's a lot of things that guys probably worry about and don't talk about. Interesting. Were there any other surprises from that, apart from the fact that all the guys were in the DMs? Did you get any surprise responses?
I was surprised. This is going to sound so weird. I'm not flexing. I promise you I'm not flexing. I just found it weird that so many people, not so many, but there was a couple people that turned it sexual when like it wasn't a sexual post. right? But like they turned it into well, I'll make you feel better. It's like, no, that's not what I'm going for here at all. And it's like, hold on, read the room. Read the room. It's not that kind of post. Like I'm not, and like, and part of me was like, I hope people don't think that I'm like fishing for compliments here, because like I'm not. I'm really not. Like I didn't post that for people to be like, Kai, you're hot. Like I'm no, I'm not. But like, like that's. But like people would be like, some people turned it very sexual, and I was like, why are we making this a sexual thing?
Don't do that, you.
I was going for like in the slightest at all. So I was flattered. I was very flattered, but like I don't need you to send me pictures of you. I'm good.
Oh.
Thank you.
Wow. Yeah. I don't know what I expected to be the answer to that question, but it wasn't that.
Yeah.
But it's
unsolicited. It happens on my end. It happens on my end a lot.
I saw that a lot of the comments were, well, if it makes you feel better, I think you're gorgeous, and I think you're gorgeous, and blah, 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 blah. Which I think people always mean well, but also part of that journey of self-acceptance is it's not about what other people think, it's about how you feel about in yourself. So, I mean, I guess the saying, I think you look great is one thing, but the I'll make you feel good is it's weird, but it's also slightly disrespectful, I feel, because it's saying that your thoughts don't matter, or that maybe you would think you look good as long as other people think you look good. And I don't know.
Yeah, I think the part that probably bothered me more than the people that like sexualized it were the people that didn't validate what would happen here is like I said, I don't feel good about my body, right? And a couple of people will comment and they'll be like, well, now you know what it feels like to be a woman. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not saying that like women don't go through that, because I think I even said in my video that like women have to go through this
I think
a lot. Like the sexualization of women, and you know, all of that in today's world, especially in Western society, it's awful, you know. So I'm not denying that, but like I'm also like, it's also kind of invalidating for me when people are like, well, now you know what it's like when blah blah blah. It's like, yeah, I know but that's not the point of this post. And so that was a little tough to deal with, because that happens a lot when it comes to stuff. Like, for example, whenever I talk about the inequality that Black people have to go through in this world, or what it's like to be a Black person, a lot of times, like if I'll put up something like that, I'll always get somebody that's like, oh, what? So white people don't matter? I'll be like, no, that's not that's not what I'm saying at all. That's not what I'm saying in the slightest. I'm just saying that this is something that I have to go through. I made a post about being Black with ADHD, and this was earlier last year, and it's a bunch of people commented, you know, white people have ADHD too. I know.
Yeah, and you got
this,
diagnosed when you were kids because you fit the stereotype, whereas I just got labeled naughty because I'm Black.
Right, and I think you were alluding to this before about the research that has been done for ADHD. A lot of the original outdated research were done on white men, you know, which is why, you know, there's barely research about ADHD in women. There's next to nothing when it comes to research for Black women, Black people in general, but especially Black women, you know, like, and or people of color in general. Like, there's no research out there. We're still winging it when it comes to, you know, ADHD and Black people. Like, this is new for us to manage. So like, I'm not saying that like other people don't go through it, but I'm saying that the research and the experience for Black people in comparison to other people, it's different. It's just different.
Yeah. That was actually one of my tag-on questions, was to say, how do you feel that being male and Black has impacted the way that ADHD has impacted your life? But I think you've covered most of it there. Is there anything else that you'd want to say about that?
I think it's harder because as a Black man, especially here in the United States, I have to be aware of how I present myself all the time. I have to be very conscious about how I come off. I have to be very aware about how I behave because I don't get given the benefit of the doubt a lot of time simply because I'm Black. And it's not necessarily because people are, quote, racist. It's just because that's just how people, have things ingrained in their brain. So I have to be mindful of that. So having to deal with that on top of the fact that I have to deal with the ADHD side of it, where like you have these two conflicting things, it's exhausting at the end of the day to not only mask as a Black man, but also mask my ADHD. By the end of the day, I'm exhausted. And I just don't think people understand what it's like to be Black. And it's not me saying that white people don't have it hard. Like I get it, everybody has hard, but man, being Black, especially in America, as a Black male with ADHD, it sucks. And like I made a post the other day, I don't want ADHD. I wish it were to go away. I mean, it makes me who I am. And I'm like, I own it and I live with it. But man, if I could just like make it go away, I would, because it's hard and it's exhausting to manage all of this every single day. And so like, I'm not doing it because it's the cool thing to talk about. I'm doing it because like I can hopefully help somebody, because this is hard.
Yeah, I hear you. I think that extra element of being in the US makes it particularly harder. I think the people that are listening to this podcast is mostly going to be our babes, so they're going to like get the whole white privilege thing. But I think when you're talking to such a huge audience, you're always going to get those people that are either willfully ignorant or blissfully ignorant and will say, oh yeah, well, white people get ADHD too, and not even think about the added layers that would come with that. So like the having to be hyper aware of how you're perceived at all times. When you have a disorder that makes it difficult to be aware of things, or when you might interpret things differently, and so you're having to double mask, as it were. And if you fail in that double masking, like I find it hard. I'm exhausted at the end of a working day because I've had to mask all day in the office. Now, if you take that to then outside on the street a bit, because if someone perceives you in the wrong way, like here, as a woman, I've got a slight advantage. And there's other disadvantages. I'm not going to lie about that. We can appreciate the nuances of yes and. So as a woman, I might be at greater risk of certain things, but there's not if I look at someone wrong because I don't make eye contact or any of the other ADHD things, you impulsively do something, the worst I'm going to get is probably showered at or a slap. You could get, you could be killed by a cop if you look at someone the wrong way or something. And so that's the level of additional masking, but also the danger and the threat that comes with that. So for people to invalidate or diminish that, it just shows a real lack of awareness of the world that we live in, really.
Yeah, for sure. But like, even with that said, I'm very, like we were talking about communities earlier, I'm very fortunate to have a really good community of people where like it's a small sect of people that that invalidate, but there is a large contingent of people that are just so sweet and so kind, so supportive, that want to learn, that want to understand. And that's what makes all of this worth it for me. It makes it better, makes it easier for me, because they're just so supportive and they want to learn and understand. And like, that's pretty dang cool.
Yeah, it outweighs the negatives.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Good. Right, where am I up to here? So I love your podcast. I didn't know about it until I started researching for this. I follow you on Instagram. I didn't know about the podcast somehow. And I really liked that in the early days, it was called Kyrus Has Friends, because I told
my God, you really did your research.
I went back.
You went all the way back.
I did. And I also found like a bizarre overlap. Like you have a friend who's a coach, Jess, who in fact, she might have been how I found you back when I first got diagnosed, because she got in contact with me. I was like, wow, this is a crazy connection. But yeah, I really like that name, which I took as being a play on your self-declared introversion. And in the intro and the outro, I love that you remind us all that mental health is a journey and that laughter is as important for the healing as tears. You could say, I love the vibe with Kai. So in amongst all that, I really appreciate the diversity of the subject matter that you cover, or your interview style, which somehow manages to get right into the nitty-gritty of some really complex and sensitive, sometimes potentially triggering subjects, all whilst being incredibly gracious and compassionate with your guests. How have you developed this style? Is it something that you've actively worked on for your content creation, or are you just naturally compassionate and curious, or is it somewhere in between, or something else entirely?
All of the above. All of the above. I love talking to people and learning from people. There's every single person out there has a story to tell, and like I find that so cool. And people just know things that like I don't know, and so like to be able to question people and to learn from them is fascinating. So I wanted to create a platform where I can just learn from people. And it started out, as you mentioned, as Kyrus Has Friends, where I would just interview my friends, because I thought my friends were really fascinating people. And then it, evolved into the Vibe with Kai podcast, because I started interviewing people that weren't necessarily my friends, but just like would bring something to the table that I found really interesting that I can learn from. And I love making them laugh. I love helping them spread their message out. And it helps because like we said before, I'm not a mental health expert, but I do like having mental health experts on, to talk and to spread their knowledge and their insight to people all over the world. And so like for me to interview her name is Andrea Santiago, and she's based in Chicago, right? She's a therapist based in Chicago. She's a great wealth of knowledge. Somebody in Florida or in the UK or in Africa would never have heard of Andrea Santiago in Chicago, but she's a wealth of knowledge. So I'm like, okay, let me interview her and get it out to as many people as possible. And, who knows who can get something out of it. So like, that's what it, has pretty much evolved into. And it's so much fun. I love interviewing people. I love talking to people. I love learning from people. And I'm going to hit 200 episodes soon, which is kind of crazy to think about. But yeah, it's 200 episodes at some point this year, which is insane. But yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. And that's really interesting, actually, that you just wanted to start out talking to your friends, because for like years now, I've had this idea in the back of my head. I was like, I want to do a podcast where I just talk to people I know, because everyday people have such amazing stories. I was listening to a lot of podcasts of celebrities interviewing other celebrities. I was like, well, these people have cool stories, but ordinary people have cool stories too. So it's great that you're getting those stories and putting them out there. And the sharing of the expert knowledge as well is a great thing for other people to be able to see.
If I may add, that was also interviewing my friends initially was also the best way for me to like hone my interview skills, like because I felt comfortable with them.
Yeah.
And so I was able to practice, certain techniques and all of that. And from doing this podcast, interviewing is not easy. Especially to keep people on task, because sometimes people will just go, and sometimes people won't give you anything, and you're just like pulling teeth, and you're like, give me something. This is an interview. Let's chat. This is a conversation. Dang it! So like it's not easy what we do.
Well, I think I must have drawn doubly lucky with this as a first draw then, because you're not making it difficult at all. I'm very lucky that I've got a producer to keep me on track. I feel like if I was doing it on my own, I would be all over the place. And if someone wasn't giving me anything, I'd probably just monologue, because I can talk for Britain. But I will follow up with your homework. I'll also get you to write down all your tricks and tips for me.
You're doing an amazing job though. Like you're making it easy for me. Like it's a two-way street.
Thank
so like
you. I'm very much enjoying it. I have never hosted it before. I have been a guest on a couple of podcasts for which my kids said, who'd want to interview you? You're boring. It's like, thanks, guys. So they were a bit less surprised when I said I'm asking someone else the questions.
No, I love it.
So I've already confessed that I only found the podcast during my research, but I have been making up for lost time. So I haven't listened to every episode, but are there any notable occasions where it didn't hit the mark that you would be happy to share with our listeners, or are they all secret?
I can definitely tell you stories without mentioning names. But there was definitely one time I had on this guest who is probably one of the most chauvinistic men I've ever talked to in my life. And we were promoting a book they had written, and I'm like listening to him talk, and I'm like, you can't say that. And like it was very degrading against women. And I don't even know if he even really fully understood that what he was saying was just not okay. And the whole episode was surrounding introversion. And every time we talked, I'm like, I don't feel comfortable with that. So I ended up making the interview very short. Like it was very short. Like I cut it. I'm like, I was very kind about it, but I cut it short. The interview did go out, but man, let me tell you, it was heavily edited because I'm like, there's no way I'm going to let this man talk the way that he was about just introversion. And like, it just wasn't okay with me. And like, I was on the fence about even putting it out in the first place, but he did have good information about introversion in general. So I put that information out there. But the whole interview, usually my interviews are like 30, 40, 50 minutes. This one was 20, like in total. And the final interview after editing was like 12 minutes long.
Wow.
Yeah, it was awful. I hated every second of it. I did not feel comfortable, and I cut it short. I was like, okay, well, thanks so much for sitting and chatting with me. If you want to blah, 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 blah. And then I cut it short. I was like, and then once we finished recording, I was like, thanks so much.
Never contact me again. Goodbye.
At some point. Yeah. Click.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't like that. That was not fun at all.
Yeah. So did that cause you to change anything about the way you carry out your podcast? Did you source that guest yourself?
Yeah. I mean, I feel pretty confident in the way that I source, guests and all of that. But I learned to look for signs as I'm interviewing people as to what kind of guests they will be. So like before I even start recording, especially if I don't know who they are, like if it's my first time chatting with them, I'll chat with them for like 5-10 minutes beforehand just to get a feel. Like they don't even know that like the reason I'm talking to them is to get a feel for how they are and how they communicate. So I learned from that specifically to just like, if I've never talked to you before, I'm going to talk to you for like 5 or 10 minutes beforehand before we hit record, just to get a feel for how you communicate and how you answer questions. And then I'm able to modify what I already have planned into the actual podcast itself. So I'm I've been doing it for so long that I'm really good at thinking on my feet, where I'm able to like change my approach based upon how they behave in the beginning of the interview.
Cool. Oh, that sounds like quite the experience. Thank you for not being that person. Can you imagine if my first episode was like that? I was like, okay, we gotta go now. Bye. Thanks, Shauna. Okay.
I love interviewing people that also have podcasts because like they know, like they just know how it works already.
Yeah.
So
I recently listened to your episode about how spirituality can help support our mental health, and I found myself nodding along frequently. You spoke about your own barriers with embracing spirituality through mainstream religion with your characteristic openness. I know that many of our ADHD babes community, myself included, find a lot of comfort in non-religious spiritual modalities such as astrology, human design, tarot, that kind of thing. Do you have any experience or thoughts about these areas of spirituality? Followed that up with another question. Are you someone who's open to the woo-woo?
Yeah. It's really interesting because I went when I was growing up, I went to a Christian school and then I got kicked out. I went to a Christian school until the 4th grade and I got kicked out. Well, I didn't get kicked out. I didn't get invited back for 5th grade. Let's say that. But my family is very religious. My mom is, in the choir at church. My sister, preaches every Sunday. My dad does a lot of the tech, technical video, audio stuff for his church. So I'm surrounded by church, but I feel as though any way that you're able to find a spiritual comfort, then go for it. There's so many different things out there that I think help ground us. And if you're able to find something that speaks to you and for you, something that helps you make the world make sense to you, then embrace it, especially if it's not hurting anybody. I don't think there's any right or wrong answers, to any of this, as long as you're not hurting anybody else, and you're respectful of other people's, spirituality. That's the way that I approach it. I love learning about it all because I think it's really fascinating to hear how people ground themselves and how people pull information from these things to push themselves forward and to be good people and to help other people. I find that really fascinating, and that's why I like learning about it all.
Oh, same. Like probably, I don't know, I wouldn't give a time scale, but a couple of years ago, probably before my diagnosis, I'd have been like, astrology, load of nonsense. Human design, what are you talking about? Tarot, are you crazy? And now I've got like 2 tarot decks. I'm learning astrology. I can pull the ephemera. I'm like full on witchy vibes. But yeah, it is very much about being able to ground and find reason for things, and just sort of see a bigger picture. It's really helpful, particularly if you are someone who doesn't really vibe with religion, organized religion, a lot of which tends to be quite patriarchal, and very rigid and structured, and
there's a lot of flaws. And you'll notice in that interview that I did with her, her name is Shay, Coach Shay. She's great. She's a great friend of mine. You'll notice in that interview, I was challenging her. And that's what I love to do in my interviews as well. I love to challenge people in a respectful way about their beliefs or approaches and stuff like that. And I would say, hey, not everybody, believes in God. Not everybody, wants to go that route. But what you're saying, can that be applied to other religions or other spiritualities as well? So it was a great conversation with her, and I loved having that conversation with her, and she was very receptive and accepting of the challenge.
It was a great conversation. That was actually what inspired the earlier question about challenging your guests with that compassion and sensitivity. It's not actually, I've listened to a couple of the episodes that you've done with her, and I think it was one where you were talking about the holiday season and navigating that. And that was actually, I think, the one that first made me think that is a really clever interview style, because she was saying, something about it's not about
buying the toys?
About what? Sorry.
Was this about buying the toys for the kids?
Yeah. And you had said, well, what about if it's not about that? What about if these are people who have literally got nothing? Because I was listening to her speak and I was thinking, she's speaking from a place of immense privilege. She's not speaking to these people. And then you asked the question, I was like, wow, that is a good interview. And then
I have no problem. Again, bravo to you. You have done more research about me than.
Are you scared yet?
Bravo to you, because I've been on interviews where people are like, "So who are you?" And I'm like, "That's not what this. What? Wait, why am I answering this question?" But you definitely done research. But that was a great moment. I'm glad you pointed that out, because that encapsulates the type of way that I like to interview people. Like I want to go about it in a respectful way, but I also want to point out like, hey, you're going about it this way. But I also want to make sure that you understand that it's not always like that. Some people are going to, come from this angle, at a different angle. So I love doing that. And like, that wasn't planned. Like I always have like my list of questions, but like, honestly, most of the time I don't get to all the questions that I have because the things that I ask will sometimes be based upon what their response is to the original question. And I've had whole interviews go in a different direction than what we originally planned. So like it, and then it just turns into something else. And that's not a bad thing. So I'm glad you pointed that out because I love that moment too. And she was great with it. I think she handled it well.
Yeah. Like every time I've heard you challenge her, she's always risen to it. And there's sort of that moment of, oh, I hadn't thought about it, but also it could work that way. So it made me feel more confidence in her as well to think, she hadn't thought about it this way, but you've shown her this other angle and she's going to think about it that way now. And I think that's an important part of what you do with a lot of your work. And like you were saying before, with people saying, oh, well, now you know what it's like to be a woman, or people saying, well, you think white people don't have problems. And you're like, yeah, but I'm showing you these other things that you haven't thought about. And I think that's one of the things that is so great about, like, social media gets a bad rap for a lot of things, but what's great about it is the way it allows us to see into other people's lives and other people's experiences and think about, oh, okay, well, I thought life was like this, but these people over here are having this life that's completely different, or this life that's the same in a lot of ways, but it's different because they are Black, they have ADHD, they are a woman, they are a man, they are gay, straight, trans, whatever. And all these different experiences can intermingle. And yeah, you get the downside of that with the trolls and whatever, but you get the good side, which is the community and the people coming together and sticking up for each other and sharing.
Absolutely.
Sorry, that was me going off on one. It wasn't really a question. It was just...
I love it. Great. You have no reason to apologize. I think it's great.
Thank you. I do that a lot. I get told off in the group for apologizing for speaking too much. So the next bit was, how do you balance the needs of your well-documented introverted nature with maintaining your online presence and your involvement? I guess it's two questions really. So, and the other bit is your involvement in musical theatre, which I also discovered in my stalking, both of which require a large degree of interaction that even me as an introvert, I think I'll find quite hard. How do you manage that? Do you have like a self-care regime to buffer it? Do you spend, the days and hours afterwards in a darkened room?
Yeah. What's funny is that, so a lot of people will ask that question. They're like, how do you do it? How do you do it? And I'm like, I always tell people, a lot of you will see me online, like making content with people, like, and I'm out and about or making content, whatever it may be. But like, I don't film myself when I'm like by myself, just like chilling, which happens 90% of the time. The stuff that I put out there is like 10% of the time. A lot of it is very curated. A lot of it's filmed in advance. A lot of, all that kind of stuff. So like, I'll dedicate every Saturday of my week to just making content or writing content, right? So all of it is done already. Most of the sketches that you'll see on, my Instagram or whatever, all of that had already been written most of the time. And I'll either film it then or I'll film it throughout the week. So that gives me time, like at the end of the day, sometimes to just like come home and just like not do anything and just to like be with my cats, which is the most introverted sentence I've ever said in my life. But I also, I know my body and I know my brain well enough to know how to prep for people and how to de-escalate from people. And I know when to leave. I know, like, if I'm going to be peopling all day tomorrow, I know how I'm going to like prep my day, prep myself beforehand when it comes to just like recharging my battery. So I've been doing it for long enough that I know my body and my brain that I can do that. But with that said, one of the biggest, misconceptions that people have about introversion is that introverts are shy. And I'm not shy at all. Like I'm not shy in the slightest. Introverts can be shy, right? But so can extroverts. But for me, like I love people. I love talking with people. I love hanging with people. I love being around people. It's just that my battery dies faster than most. So I'll remove myself from a situation once my battery dies. And so it's pretty easy for me, at least, to find that balance because I've been doing it for so long and I've embraced my introversion. And so I'm not afraid to say no. I'm not afraid to leave. I'm not afraid to, just say, hey, I'm gonna chill at home tonight, and not do anything. Like I fully embraced it, and now my friends and my family, they understand that. So it's a little bit easier for me to balance.
Oh, that I thought that was maybe not my best question on here. But I don't know if you saw my face when you were speaking, and I was like, I've just had a light bulb moment because I was like, oh yeah, I'm an extrovert. I couldn't do that. I'm like, Emma, when it's like, you're a wizard, Harry, like, you're an introvert, Emma. That's why you don't know when to leave, because you spend your whole life thinking you're an extrovert and then you can party hard and you enjoy all the things, but actually you get tired real quick.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You get tired real quick. I'm actually writing a whole book about it. About embracing your introversion and how to go about doing that. And I'm hoping that people, specifically adults, can know that it's okay to be an introvert. You don't have to pretend to be an extrovert. You don't have to, shy away from your introversion. Like, you can be an adult introvert and own that and be okay with it.
I don't know how far you are with the book, the chapters, the proposal, but I kind of make a suggestion that you include a little bit about recognizing yourself as an introvert, because I look at your content and other people I follow who write about introversion. I'm like, yeah, that's good for people who are introverted. Yeah, I could see how that would work. And I'm like, no, that you should be reading that more closely. It's you. So I'm going to go back into all your introvert posts now, as well as the ADHD ones, because yeah, I think it's me.
Yeah, well, introversion is a spectrum, so
yeah.
like it affects everybody differently, and we all handle it differently. So there's people that are extroverts that have some introverted qualities, and vice versa, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's a spectrum. It's not black and white. It's definitely a spectrum.
Yeah. I feel like I've read about extroverted introverts, and I wonder if I'm one of them, or maybe an introverted extrovert. I'll get the book when it comes out. Keep me posted.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I'll send you a free copy.
Wow, thanks. I'm going to go for, what was the reaction like from both family members, first of all, and people who you work with after your diagnosis? Like, how did you go about telling them, and what was their response like?
Wow. So I admittedly was afraid to tell my family. And I don't know why. And this was with any of my, whether like depression, anxiety, ADHD, all of it. I was afraid to talk with my family about it. And I'll tell you why. I thought that because there's such an ignorance about mental health, especially in the Black community, I felt that my mom and dad would blame themselves for this, would blame themselves for my depression, for my anxiety. And that's just not how it works. Like, I'm not depressed because, my mom or dad. I had a really, really blessed life growing up. I come from a position, I speak from a position of privilege. My mother and father had, full-time jobs. They were able to support me in my dreams and my goals. My sister has been probably one of the most supportive, loving people in my life. So I speak from a position of privilege from that standpoint. And I didn't want them to think that I'm struggling because of them. So I honestly I have never sat down with my family and said, hey, this is what I'm diagnosed with. But my sister follows me on Instagram and Facebook, so she gets it, and her and I will have conversations briefly about some stuff, but she gets it. My mom, she doesn't have social media like that, but people will send her stuff and be like, "Hey, your son put out this," and she'll be like, "Wait, what?" So I've it's cool explaining to her what ADHD is. But at no point I've never really gone into detail with my family. My friends and coworkers were a little bit different because when I started making the content, they started approaching me being like, I have to deal with that too, or I struggle, at work. I've had a couple of coworkers come up to me and say, hey, I see your stuff about ADHD, now you're struggling. I struggle with it here at work too, help me, kind of thing. How do you manage this and how do you manage this? So I talk about it more with strangers than I do with my friends or family. But even with all of that being said, everyone's so supportive. It's been an easy thing to talk about. But I also recognize that that's not going to be the case for everybody. There's going to be some people that get this diagnosis that want to talk with their family or friends, and they're not going to get a supportive response. And to them, I would say, stay strong. Your feelings are valid. Your diagnosis is valid. Believe in yourself. Get the help that you need. Push forward. You're going to be okay. I promise.
What a perfect note to end on there. Yeah, big love. That's that was really lovely to listen to, actually. I could say more, but I don't want to, because I feel like that is a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for being so candid, so honest, so open. Obviously I was expecting a degree of that because I follow you online, but people on their online personas, and you have been more than I could have imagined. So thank you so much for me and all the babes.
And if I may, what you and your team are doing here with ADHD babes and like not only just the ADHD community, but the Black community as well, like Black women, the ADHD community, like this is great. This is rare. This is not a thing that people can find often, unfortunately, but you're doing such an amazing job with this and you're helping so many people. And so I want to say thank you for creating this platform to have these types of conversations and to invite people such as myself to tell our stories. So honestly, thank you for everything that you've done.
Oh my God. I can't claim any of that. I just come along, but yeah, it's an amazing space. We all appreciate it so much, and you're right, it is a rare find. It's an important place, and yeah, we're just doing what we can. So we're going to recap over what we spoke about, which, oh my goodness, so many things. What would you say you would want to be the main things that people took away from this conversation? Apart from, obviously, I feel like the very big overarching thing is trust yourself, love yourself, accept yourself. Is there anything else that you'd want to add to that?
Your feelings are valid. You're not alone. Get a second opinion. It's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay. I like that. I think we should change the title. It's going to be okay.
Yes.
You say no, it's already gone out. Right, thank you. So we've talked briefly about your book. Do you have a release date for that, or is it in the very early stages?
Summer. No, it's pretty much done.
Oh wow.
Pretty much so spring, summer. I'm hoping to get it out there. So yeah, we're gonna be putting a pre-sale announcement out there within the next month or so.
Fantastic. I look forward to getting my free copy in the post. But yeah, do let us know and we'll make sure all the babes know about it. Is there anything else that you've got coming up that you'd like to share with us and our community?
No, but feel free to follow me. The easiest way to get in contact with me, I try to respond to as many things as I can. Just shoot me an email, DM, whatever it may be. Follow me. I'm on every platform. Follow me, and I'll say hi or say hi to me or say you listen to the podcast, and I'll be like, oh hey, what's up?
Fantastic. So we will get all that in the show notes. Are your social handles and website easy enough for people to find? Do you want to give those to our listeners now?
Yeah, my website's really easy, thevibewithkai.com. And all of my social handles on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all of them are at The Vibe with Kai. I'm really easy to find.
You heard it from Kai, The Vibe with Kai. Yes. Right, so go along, follow him, listen, like, subscribe, all of them things there. Kai, thank you so much. You've been
Oh my God, thank
amazing.
you.
It's been a whole vibe with Kai.
Yes, absolutely.
And so, ADHD Babe listeners, thank you for joining us for this episode. Why not follow us so you don't miss out on any in the future? Remember, you can reach out to us with a message for our Dear Babes advice episodes. You can send us a voice note or a written message by clicking the link in the show notes. Once again, we'd love it if you could leave us a rating and a review and let everyone know what you thought about the podcast. Do the same for Kai. Look after yourselves, and we will be back with another great episode soon. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of ADHD Babes, the podcast. If you're a Black woman or non-binary person and need help and support in managing your ADHD or advice on diagnosis, please visit ADHDbabes.com. No clinical diagnosis is required to join. Join us in 2 weeks for a new episode. Until then, all the love from the ADHD Babes team.
Just as I am, can you take me just as I am?